Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the WION Sports Broadband edition with me, Digvijay Singh Deo. Now, over the last 3 weeks, we have spoken to Olympic champions, Olympic medalists, world champions, even a Formula One racer. But today we have a very special guest joining us. Viswanathan Anand, Padma Vibhushan, is joining us from Germany, where he is currently stranded, if that's the right word. Anand, if I could start by asking you and using a chess term, perhaps you are under check at the moment.
I think I'm just slightly off center, but yes. So I came to play with my German club, and I was going to play 2 matches, one in February, which I did play in, and then the second one in the middle of March, and I was supposed to catch the flight the day afterwards. And one day before the club match, my team captain wrote to me saying the match is off, no thing. And then in 2 days, I had to catch the flight, but of course the flight got cancelled. And then I've just been awaiting events. It's already a good month since that happened, and it's at least another 2 to 3 weeks before flights resume. So on the one hand, I am, I'd really like to be home with my family, but on the other, luckily, I'm still able to talk to them, and I'm fairly comfortable here. I have friends nearby, so it could have been worse, but yeah, waiting to come back.
You even make sure that, every day in the morning and through the day, you're in touch with the family, your son as well. But just because you're in Germany, how is the situation there compared to what you are reading and what you are being told about what's happening in India with this lockdown? So could you, in a sense, compare how Germany is vis-a-vis India at the moment?
Okay, so first of all, I'm in a reasonably small town. It's about 20,000 people. And here I would say that the restrictions haven't been very strict. Generally, Germans, they don't need it to be very strict. You tell them something, they do it. People have been observing all the distancing measures and all that pretty much voluntarily. And things work quite comfortably. So I'm able to stick to my daily routines and all. And the thing is, we are getting a drip of information about India here through websites and the internet, and that's basically it. Understandably, the Germans have been the German news channels and all have been more focused on Germany and Europe, because that is one of the epicenters of the crisis. But there have been mentions about India. But, I know from being Indian that it's very hard to capture India in a few snapshots. So I'm trying to make sense of it, but I think we will only have the time for a full-scale assessment once I get back. And, once people are able to walk around and talk to everyone, because there must be, you can easily find a good story or a bad story here or there, but to get the big full picture is very hard.
Okay, because, we've been hearing of all these stories of people stuck here, stuck there, but you are a very identifiable Indian sports person who's stuck in Germany. In fact, I was reading also that Sumit Nagal, our young tennis player, who took a set of Roger Federer at the US Open, he's also stuck in Germany as well. So have you been able to reach out to the Indian embassy in Berlin or just inquire about the possibility of any evacuation, or are you willing to just wait it out and see how things pan out?
No, they have been very helpful with information. Unfortunately, it appears that the information they're giving me is that right now it's simply impossible to get back home. So I'll just have to wait for the easing of the restrictions. But they've been very helpful and proactive with information. It's been very easy to communicate with them and get all the info I need. In fact, yesterday I needed to ask how I could extend my visa, because obviously I'll be overstaying. And they sent me all the links, and so I'm going to go do that today. And that's been nice. And in fact, I can recommend their Twitter feed because it's quite up to date. And so it's the best, because every once in a while, if you pick this up from Indian newspapers, some of them are rumors because they rumor a flight coming here, flight coming there. But these people, the Indian embassy in Berlin is actually clarifying it quite precisely.
Okay. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was not just because of your stature, but also because of the sharpest minds around Indian sport. And I just wanted to get a more of a overall picture from one of India's top sporting minds. Has this, the global sporting calendar has been wiped out by this pandemic, obviously, but has this period made us value sport even more? We sort of took it for granted, didn't we? Especially some of us used to watch a lot of tennis or football, wait for the Saturday or the Sunday when the holidays came around and sit in front of the TV on around 4, 5 in the evening, watch sport happening and uninterrupted, sort of taken for granted. You think now we're going to value sport and sports persons even more?
I think yes. I mean, sports fills a very important part of our lives, and we all have our favorite sporting moments during the year. This month this will happen, that month that will happen, and so on. And you look forward to these events, and then suddenly it's taken away. In chess, we've been slightly luckier than other sports because you can actually have good chess events which don't lose anything in terms of sporting excitement because it happens online. It's similar to what it looks like when you follow a normal tournament. And so there's been a lot of online chess activity, and that gives us something to follow. But we're also in shock because suddenly I don't know if my first tournament after this will be in September or will it be next year. You simply have no idea. Also, if this situation had come on us 10 years ago, when internet speeds were not what they are today and internet penetration was not what it's today, I wonder how people would have coped. I mean, now at least people are able to distract themselves during the day. Otherwise, you'd have simply a lot of idle people. So that has been one boon.
Yes, the fact that 10 years back for us to even sit and have a conversation with you like this, I'm sitting at home, you are in Germany. Earlier, I remember to do an interview with you, we had to, send the camera home and then have a link and it's a live link and all that. But technology sort of made it easier. You think at the moment, you spoke about online chess, but there's also we're seeing virtual Grand Prix, virtual MotoGPs, virtual cycling. Is that sort of the way to go at the moment, just to keep the fan engaged, give them something to, give them something to look forward to?
Definitely. You want to keep your fans engaged. And I mean, in the end, every sport is a community of people who love that sport. And this is a good time to reach out to each other. I mean, the events can be very simple, but you keep the connection alive and you enjoy the activity together. And that's why every sport is trying to find some way to get around this.
You're in Germany, so I was reading that in Germany, there was talk that the Bundesliga could resume behind closed doors. Right now, that sort of decision has been pushed back a bit, considering what's going on. But where do you stand on this? Because I was speaking to Rohan Bopanna and Mahesh Bhupati as well, especially when Wimbledon got cancelled, and asked them that there was a possibility of playing behind the closed doors and what they thought about it. They said that a lot of sport like football, tennis, is about the fans as well. So here, on one hand, you have the idea that you could resume sport behind closed doors to give people some entertainment. But also the other side is that what is sport without its fans? A bit of a, you're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. So where do you stand on this?
It's a situation for emergencies. I mean, everybody accepts that sports without the fans is diminished, but you have fans who can follow it on TV or the internet. And it's a compromise. I think everyone accepts it's far from perfect, but at the same time, what do you do? But for me, it's not only about sport, it's life in general. I mean, when have we ever faced something like this? I mean, I grew up in a world in which you never thought about things like travel. And I think by the time I was in my 20s, I was completely used to the idea of forgetting briefly which country I happened to be in at this point. For us, the world was just like your city. You needed to be somewhere, you just went there. And amongst so many other things, it feels like the world has just stopped. And this was just sci-fi. This was just something that every once in a while a scary movie would come out. You always felt that scenario was too extreme, but here we are, and it's striking.
there's one movie which is going around which is called Contagion. I don't know if you managed to see it, but this Contagion is something which I was told you have to watch it, and it sort of scares you. And as you said, it's more like out of a sci-fi movie. But there will come a time, Anand, there will come a time when the world slowly limps back to normal. The question is, what are the lessons we should remember from this time? Because we have this tendency to move on and get back and, be extravagant once again. What are the lessons we should remember from this period?
I hope we remember restraint, because first of all, the demand to have everything at your fingertips as soon as you want it, these demands have consequences. And I hope we will learn to slow things down a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that I want to go through this, but the fact that the air quality in so many cities is unbelievable. I mean, can't we all slow down a little bit? And the other thing is, I mean, I'm not blaming anyone. It's very hard to predict predict black swan events like this. But now that we've experienced one, I really feel most governments and countries should at least have some minimal procedure for this sort of situation. Because if you don't, then first of all, the consequences are terrible, and quite a lot of people die. So I hope we'll all learn to slow down a little bit, and also accept that everything can't be instantaneous. I mean, the world we were living in was just a little bit too fast, and the virus was able to take advantage of that.
Yes, and Pankaj Advani was telling me the other day that we've got to learn and appreciate the small things in life. And some other things which have really struck me is, as you mentioned, the air quality. You also, this is lovely sights you're seeing, especially on social media, of animals coming and roaming around in cities. If there are forests nearby, who would have thought that governments could actually shut the entire country down? I mean, so it's possible when there's always been this talk of being carbon neutral or carbon emissions or greenhouse gases and all that. We've always said, oh, no, it's not possible. And I think now it is possible, and perhaps governments can effectively sort of remind people that, there is, that this is sort of nature pushing back. And if we don't stop, as you said, we could completely fall over the cliff. And I think now none of us can even complain about certain things. Oh, I couldn't do this, I couldn't go on that holiday. These are the things that we should now, as you said, learn from and be, and as you said, show restraint.
Yes, very much. So, I mean, look, if tomorrow the restrictions are lifted, everything will go back to the way it was. I have no doubt about it. But over some time, if we can, as a society, learn to live at maybe 90% instead of 100% of what we're doing, it'll be so much better. A little bit less traffic. I mean, there's so many things we just accepted as the price of progress. Things like traffic, air quality, bad infrastructure, all these things. And you just thought, well, this is how it has to be. And now we see that if you slow things down, there are also immense benefits. I know this. I'm simply blown away by this zebra trotting around in Paris. This was, but there have been thousands of examples. There are ducks that doing the guided tours around various tourist cities, and it's beautiful. Actually, for the first time, you feel some sympathy for these animals. They haven't been able to do this in forever, and they're just curious and they're walking around, and it's nice. But I think we could learn a lot from this enforced lesson, because we always thought it's impossible. You cannot slow society down, and now it's well, you can. As you mentioned, countries are even able to shut their people down for a while. So perhaps we should learn to live with some restrictions, because the benefits are so clear as well.
Yes, fair enough. This is one of the points I wanted to draw you on, even though it's not chess, it's not your sport, but you have been a mentor at Olympic Gold Quest for a lot of time, for a long time now. The Olympics have got postponed, and it's the first time it's happened since the Second World War. I mean, everything else around the world is shutting down, so obviously the Olympics had to, could not keep risking the lives of the athletes. But how crucial will a role seniors like you play in mentoring the young athletes? Because for a lot of them, the Olympics was their one shot at glory. They'd given 4 years of their life just to peak in time at these Olympics in June, July, especially someone like the shooters. But now they've had to recalibrate their entire approach. Do you think that now it's more essential for mentors to be with them and guide them through that process and how to navigate this entire bump in the road?
Yes. On the one hand, mentoring is important and we'll all have to help each other through. But on the other hand, who has experienced anything like this? I mean, none of the mentors have experienced anything like this either. This is such an unusual situation. The only thing I can say is that sometimes, life is more powerful than our plans. And there's nothing we can do about this. You have to accept the inevitable. The other thing is, if mentally you can write off these few months and then next March, start thinking as in the same way that you were thinking this March, and try to get back into that groove of peaking for July. Of course, in sports where you felt maybe because of your age, you had a good shot, and now you're going to be a year older, that's a pity, but what can we do? This was beyond anyone's control. So first thing, you have to accept reality, and there will be this process. Initially, you'll have this conflict within you, then you'll have denial, and finally you'll overcome and get over it, because I think by July, August, we'll have accepted all this as the new normal. And then you have to slowly get back to where you were and try to peak. But there is enough time for that. And hopefully if we, in OGQ and we are able to communicate with our athletes and address their concerns, things will be back to normal.
Yes, that's perhaps why we start appreciating people like you, who plan so much in advance. When you play a game of chess, there's so much. Perhaps we should actually have a book from you in this period of isolation, how to survive a future lockdown, because you can think so far ahead, especially that's the way you work in chess. But just staying with chess, and I know this is something you don't want to perhaps you just mentioned, but I want to just bring you up on it, because your organization, your sport, FIDE, they haven't come out too well, because they decided to go ahead with this candidates tournament in even though the world was starting to get locked down, and then in the middle of it they had to close it down. Lots of criticism coming around there. Well, is it fair on the players? Because you as you said, you put a lot of effort into preparing for a tournament like this. You've played a certain series of matches, then it's all shut down. So when it resumes, eventually, we don't know when, do you think they should start from scratch, or do you think that where things stand, which is what the FIDE had said at that point, but do you think it's not fair on the athletes, on the chess players?
No, I'm afraid this is one of the situations where you can't put the omelette back in the egg. The tournament has started, and the people who are leading will never agree to just give up their lead. They work too hard for it. I don't criticize FIDE that much. Of course, they could have taken the decision, we are not going to even try this. But in February, a lot of world leaders were saying that things are not normal, and a sporting body tends to follow the government and what they do. So they went ahead with it. The players were not endangered, in the sense that the players actually had better access to medical facilities than most people on the planet, or they would have had in their hometowns. But it's true that if airspace shuts or something, then suddenly the whole tournament is in jeopardy, and you have to follow extreme measures while having it. So in future, I don't think any organization will dare to do it again. But again, it's always easier to learn from the first time than from your imagination. So I don't see how they can put this right. They cannot compensate Teimur Rajabov, who was correct in withdrawing from the event, and compensate the leaders of the tournament at the same time. This is not something where you just need a clever diplomat. It's impossible to solve these two contradictory. You cannot make them both feel happy. So I don't see what they can do now. But sometimes in life, you just have to accept that things happen beyond your control, and there is no way back. Even this expectation that everything's going to be fair and proper is a sign of society in control of events. And if something happens beyond our control, what can you do? You just have to accept it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's the kind of comment I'm also hearing from other sports, especially, you were looking at the likes of Roger Federer, Mary Kom, Leander Paes, Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, maybe Alison Felix of 2020 being their last Olympics. But some of them we may not see them in 2021. You never know. This is sport, and Father Time doesn't respect sport. And even Gopi told me yesterday that at some point of time, we have to forget that sport is fair. It's never going to be fair. There are going to be decisions which are going to be not in favor of certain people, but the show has to go on. It has to go on. and you were like it, you were not like it. But you were also doing commentary during this candidates, and also how was that experience? And what do you think? How things stand? Were you a bit surprised looking at the leaderboard, where how things stand in this candidates tournament?
I enjoyed the commentary bit a lot. I mean, it's the first time I've done it, and before it started, I tried to think, how should I approach it? I mean, should I try to be a top player, someone who experienced this? And of course, there's a bit of wanting to share that experience, but mostly I felt that as a commentator, you have to sit there and enjoy the game like a fan, and try to convey that. So you mix a bit of both. The leaderboard seems reasonable to me. I mean, the only surprise is really that Caruana didn't get going, but maybe I'm too influenced by his results in Vaikanse and Isle of Man last year. Maybe this cannot happen every time, and these players managed to successfully solve that. Having said that, he's within striking distance, so by no means lost. The tournament is quite close, so the two leaders are doing well, but they are not beyond reach. And well, I enjoyed following it as a fan. In a way, it's nice because you don't have this pressure at all that you have when you're a player. But it's bizarre. At the same time, when you look at it, you keep on thinking, oh, what would I do if I was there? And so there's sort of this yearning to be there as well. So you're balancing very contradictory feelings.
No, but since you're saying that you were, what would I have done if I was there? Have you seen something in the players who are there to think that the person who goes on and wins this can really challenge Magnus Carlsen? Is there something which shows it shows?
Yes, I mean, look at someone like Maxime. He accepted the invitation 5 days before, and he already knew for a fact that this coronavirus situation was very unpredictable, but he still wanted to go there. I mean, it shows how desperate he was to play, because he's not someone who can say, well, based on the logical decision is to wait 3 years because this is not right. But of course, he took the decision from his heart. He said, I'm not going to wait 3 years. I want to try now. That's probably the most important thing. So I believe that the participants are, in a way, they'll be stronger from this very unusual thing. I mean, candidates even broken up into two. A World Championship match pushed almost 100% into next year. These things will test you, but at the same time, if you can hang in there and keep your motivation, that in a sense itself is a kind of training. So I believe that no one in these candidates, especially the leaders, the two leaders and the two following people, I think they're not that far behind Magnus. Clearly they're weaker, but they're not that far behind. If they pull it off and they win their candidates and they have that positive emotional boost, they should be very dangerous.
Okay. My final question had to be regarding chess, but it's a different kind of a question. Your chess skills are legendary, but how is Viswanathan Anand the chess playing dad? Because I'm reading that you're playing chess with your son online. So how do you manage to keep the legendary skills away and just be a dad when you're playing chess with him?
It's hard because, if he does something, my first instinct is to tell him, no, do the other thing and so on. But Aruna keeps reminding me, no, you're his dad, not his coach. Relax. And so, but there have been some funny situations. So there is this site that he goes to, chesskid.com, where you can play. And they have levels. So he successfully worked his way up to level 9. And now he was on level 10. And that he couldn't beat. And it's not surprising because that is in fact the full level where it plays like a computer and it's just very hard to beat. And so one day he came and asked me, he said, why don't you go and beat it for me? And that way my score, so play with my account and beat it. And I said, okay, I'll try. Well, what can you say? I tried and then I played like 3 games with it. And then I came back to him and said, I can't do it. It's too strong. Because of course, it is just, I mean, we often say that computers are stronger than human beings. And this one is it. It is the highest level. And there is they don't have any kid factor, nothing which makes it slightly weaker. So I came back and told him, no, I can't do it. He was very annoyed. He thought he had solved that problem, but there it was. But mainly, I think it's just a chance to connect with him. I'm very happy he's playing chess and he's doing quite well. But when we play, it's a mixture of dad and opponent because he can't help himself. He has to play the fool.
The problem with being a journalist for so many years, you sort of spot news specs. The fact is, if he's reached level 9 on his own, well, there's another chess player coming up in the family, another chess prodigy. Perhaps it's too early to say so. I'm not going to jinx anything. But Anand, thank you so much for your time. And all I can say is hope to see you back in India soon and reunited with your family. And it does get difficult. All of us can, sort of empathize with what you're going through. But good to see that your spirits are up. And good to see that you're actually being brave enough to get into these discussions on Indian television as well. I saw you in one of those 6 frames. So if you can survive that, you can survive anything.